In this video, we're going to be talking about one of my most favorite tools in HardOps, which is going to be HardOps Mirror. So let's go to Q menu, and there it is. Now you can also access it through the modifiers, but honestly, no one is really using it this way. We all use shortcut, which is Alt X. Now when you press Alt X, a few things gonna happen. First of all, you're gonna see this gizmo in the middle, which is going to show you all the axes in color, so X, Y, and Z. And this is awesome because when you are in local view and your model is rotated and the local orientation is different than the global orientation, you can clearly see visually where all the axes are, so you don't have to think, or try, like in Vanilla Blender. Next, you're gonna see this H menu here and also the menu on the top. And if I press tab, this menu gonna get expanded. You can also press on this option here, same thing, okay? So let's go back to the tooltip here, and you can see three messages, D, A, and X, all the shortcuts, right? So D menu for adjustments, A to add additional mirror, and X to reset to default. There's obviously way more to HardOps Mirror than this, but these are important. So D menu, right? What is the D menu? Well, D menu is really simple. It's the same menu as here. It's just simplified. So in this menu, you can see all the different states of mirror, so different types of mirror. This one's gonna add a regular mirror. This one's gonna be a secondary mirror modifier. This is gonna apply a mirror modifier, so run a mirror and apply it. This one's gonna simply bisect and add a modifier. This one's gonna bisect it and apply it. This one's gonna run a symmetry, and this one's gonna flip it. So I'm gonna show you all of these in a minute. Then if you're gonna press tab here, the D menu is going to get expanded by orientation and pivot points. And these are important because you can dictate where the gizmo is located and how you're going to be mirroring. So across what? An origin point, cursor, etc. Right? And these are the same as in Vanilla Blender. So transformation and pivot points. Let's talk about the most basic operations, how HardOps Mirror actually works. So if I'm going to run a cut here and I want it to mirror it to the other side, you want to press Alt X and you want to click from the side you're mirroring, right? So you want to mirror from this side, you want to click here in order to mirror to the other side. So it's kind of intuitive because you click where you want to mirror from. So click and boom. And this is going to add a new mirror modifier because our mirror is set to modifier, right? In addition to this, what you can do, you can mirror to multiple sides, so multiple axes. So you can do it in two ways. So the first way would be to simply stack axes in one mirror modifier, and the other would be to add multiple mirror modifiers. So let me show you how it works. Alt X, and then if you want to stack multiple axes into one mirror, you want to hold Shift. You can actually see that here in the H menu, which is why this H menu is so useful. It's going to remind you what you can do and what kind of shortcuts you have. So you don't have to go back to documentation. All of it is in here. So it's like a reference. So we're going to hold Shift, right? And click here, here, and here. And two things going to happen. One, the gizmo is going to turn red, which means you used up all the axes. And you can see here, we stacked all the axes into one mirror. But what if you wanted to split it into different modifiers? Well, you can do it too. So Alt X, and let's create our first mirror. Then we're gonna press Alt X, and we're gonna use this shortcut here, which was A, right? So see here on the tooltip, A, add additional mirror. Okay, so watch. Alt X, then we're gonna press A, and watch what's gonna happen here. Okay, A, boom. It changed from modifier to new modifier, and you also had this tooltip on the bottom, right? Information, what happened. So now when I'm going to mirror, it's going to create another mirror with the axis I chose, which was Y. So now, since I'm in new modifier menu, Alt X, I don't have to press A anymore, because if I do, I'm going to revert back to modifier. So you don't want to click anything, you just simply press Alt X and you choose an axis here, and it's going to create a third mirror with the z-axis, right? So we got now three different mirrors with different axes. If you wanted now to reset your mirror to the basic behavior, so, let's say you ran mirror with different settings, you change some pivot points, etc. And now you want it to revert back to original mirror because Hardop's mirror is going to remember the settings, right? So if you change anything in here and here or even here, it's going to remember that for the next mirror. So the last tooltip here is for resetting, right? You can also see that here under this H menu, X for resetting. So let me show you, Alt X, and then we have it set to new modifier, right? We want to reset it back to the default settings. You just press X and it's going to reset to original settings. And now you're going to just add simply a mirror. So that's the basic behavior of mirror in Hardops, okay? Now let me show you a bit more advanced stuff. So first of all, let's rotate this cube on y-axis, in fact, no, on z-axis, and let's move it somewhere here. If I press Alt-X by default, I'm going to be mirroring across the origin point, so active origin, right? Which means origin of the activated selected object. But I can change it to, for example, median point, which in this case is going to be the same, but you will see that we're going to have this gizmo being created in the middle, which is what Hardops mirror going to do, which is awesome. But what if I wanted to mirror through cursor, right? Which is here. And this is all fine, but what if I wanted to mirror this across the global orientation? Well, then you need to change orientation from local, which is the same as the cube, to global. And then you can mirror. So you have a lot of advanced control through these options here and also through these options here, right? The same, for example, with individual origins. Let's say that you have two objects, right? So let's just move one here and Shift D and Shift Z, move one here. And then let's create another object here in the middle, right? Scale it. And we're going to grab these two objects, select this one with Shift, Alt X, right? And then we're going to press X to reset the mirror, and it's going to mirror it through the active origin, so the origin of the active object, which is the object you selected last. So we selected these two, which we want to mirror across this one with Shift, Alt X, and boom. But you can now change things, right? So what you could do is you could change it from active origin to median point, which is going to create a median point between all the objects that are selected. And you can do stuff like this, right? Or you could choose cursor. And the funny thing about cursor is that if you're using machine tools, you can change the angle of the cursor, because cursor by default, right? Let me just delete that. I don't know if you can see that, but cursor by default, let me just drop a plane here. You see the orientation of the cursor, it follows the origin of the world. So it follows the global orientation of the world, right? X, Y, and Z. But you can change it with machine tools. So watch this. If I'm going to grab this cube and I'm going to rotate it, right? Like this. What I can do is I can move my cursor to this face and shift its orientation, okay? Watch, Shift S with machine tools, and when you move it to face without holding Alt, you will change the cursor orientation and it's gonna align to the normals of this face. So let me show you how this works. Select these two cubes, Alt X, and let's just reset the mirror with X. Then we're gonna choose the pivot point as a cursor. But now we can also change the orientation because we can choose it from local to cursor, and it's going to shift according to cursor orientation. And you can do stuff like this, right? So this mirror is extremely powerful. And if you combine this with machine tools, you can do some serious damage, right? So play with it and, discover other combinations on your own. Alright, now let's talk about other options here. Let's talk about the modify apply. Now this one in my opinion makes no sense because it's actually the same as symmetry. Let me show you. If I'm going to run a cut here and try to run this modify apply, and by the way, you don't have to go here to this menu. You can see here in H menu, you can hold Control or Alt and you can scroll through these options, yeah? So let's go to modify apply, and if I'm going to run this modifier, it will do nothing, right? And the reason for that is because we have boolean active. We would need to apply the boolean to the mesh in order for this modifier to work. So now if I'm going to run this modifier apply, it's going to run a mirror and apply it, which is literally the same as symmetry. So for me, it just makes no sense. So you can use either or, okay? Now this one, on the other hand, is actually quite interesting, the bisect modifier. So the bisect modifier, what it will do, or bisect mirror modifier, it will bisect the mesh and keep a mirror. So watch, Alt X, bisect modifier, boom. So now if I go to edit mode, this left hand side becomes a phantom. It's, you know, it's just a ghost, yeah? It doesn't exist. So if I, do anything here, it's going to be repeated on the other side. It's kind of like an active mirror in sculpting, similar behavior, okay? And by the way, bisect modifier is gonna create this empty in the middle, you see that? So you can grab this empty and you can do some fun stuff with it, just saying. Now be careful because you will have to fill out, these empty faces here because it's gonna get hollowed. Because when when you apply the modifier, if the faces were here, you would have non-manifold geometry in the middle of your mesh. You don't want that. So if I'm going to run a smart apply on this cube right now, right, you see you're going to have these hollow faces you're going to have to fill out. So just, be careful, right? And that's what's going to happen. But you can manipulate with this mesh with the empty inside. Now, next one is going to be just bisect. So bisect is going to do the same thing, but it will apply the modifier and create a face at the back of your model. So watch, if I'm gonna do that and run this bisect modifier, that's what's gonna happen, okay? Now this is interesting because this one actually doesn't apply the boolean, but bisects the mesh and applies the face. So that's how it works. The next mirror option for HardOps is gonna be symmetry, and I'm gonna show it to you in 4.0 because I wanna show you how this works with Mesh Machine, because I use Mesh Machine for symmetry, and I'll tell you why. So when you're going to have a mesh like this, and I'm gonna apply this, so this is a real mesh, you can Alt X and just go here to symmetry and symmetrize it. Now the reason why I don't use HardOps is because Mesh Machine is way quicker, and I don't have to go and change options, for my mirror in HardOps. So the way Mesh Machine works, you need to have it enabled. You go to edit mode, so I can do it with my pie menu with machine tools. Go to whichever edit mode you want, vertex, edge, face, doesn't matter. So now if I press Alt X, you see this gizmo. It's a pie gizmo. If I move my mouse a little bit, right, to different directions, just the tiny movements, you see there's a dot dancing, and it will determine which direction the mirror is gonna go. And it's also a view-based mirror, which means you need to align yourself to the axis, parallel to the axis you want to mirror across. So I want to mirror from right to left on x-axis, so I have to align myself here. Alt X, move my mouse to the left, and I'm done. And you got some options here, right? So now watch how fast this is when I want to mirror this to all sides. Alt X, Alt X, Alt X. It's crazy fast. This is why I'm not using HardOps mirror, because simply in this case, it's actually slower, which is crazy. So there you go. Now the last mirror here is going to be flip, and this one is quite useful when you want to flip mesh to the other side. So let's say that I have this mesh. Let me just move this a bit to the left, so it's going to be easier to explain why this is so useful. Let's say I wanted to flip this, so, move this cut to the other side. So I don't want it here, I want it on the other side. I can't really rotate the mesh because in this case, you see that my cut's gonna be on the other side. So instead of being here, it's gonna be here. What I need to do, I need to flip it. And that's where the flip mirror comes in handy, right? So Alt X, then you select flip, and then you click and you're done. And your mesh is being flipped to the other side. And obviously, you can use all these, fancy settings here for orientation and cursor if you want to. So you can do some crazy flips. Like for example, I'm just, gonna give you one example. Let's just create a plane here and let's rotate this plane like this. And then we're gonna move the cursor to that plane. So to select it. And you see that again, machine tool is gonna align this cursor. Now this cursor is still in the same position as the origin point of this cube, which means it's in the middle of the cube. So now Alt X, and I'm gonna choose the flip mirror, but now instead of local, I'm gonna choose cursor as a orientation point, right? And then I'm gonna flip this, it's gonna do stuff like that, which is kind of crazy. So, you can do some really cool stuff with this mirror, and some of the results are unpredictable, or maybe something that you wanted. So again, you gotta play with this mirror to kind of get the feel of all these options here and how they work together. I'm slowly losing my voice. Anyway, this would cover the options here, and also the orientation and pivot points. And you have two more settings here, two more keystrokes, V and W. That will simply cycle through these two at the top, okay? This one is actually, I think, broken because it doesn't cycle. You see, it goes to view and gets stuck. I wonder if it's actually also like this in 4.0. This could be some bug in 4.3. You know, sometimes these tools, you know, they need updating, and Hardops and Boxcar are just massive add-ons. Let me see here. I get stuck as well. Okay, so maybe it's bugged because it should be cycling through them. I might report it to Master Zion. Cool, so this would cover these, and now let's talk about these because these are really important. So in order to talk about the first one, which is TextureWare FS2, we're gonna be talking about this because that's similar. Texture flip U, what the hell does it mean, right? Well, in order for me to show it to you, we need to go to Cycles, and I'm gonna launch our add-on MaterialWorks. And let's go to metal, and let's just put some metal texture on our cube. And then we're gonna go to Decal Machine. So press W to turn off box scatter. I go to Decal Machine. Let me grab my decals, one of them, let's say one of these, right? And I'm gonna pop it in here and make it smaller. We're going to rotate it with Decal Machine. And now let's say I want it to mirror to the other side. So shift click on the cube, Alt X, X to reset the mirror, and mirror. And you see you're gonna have a problem. You're gonna have a mirror image of this decal. And the way to fix this normally is to go to the mirror here, go to data, and here, flip mirror U. So this one's gonna flip it horizontally, and V is gonna flip it vertically. This is why we're going to be talking about mostly this one, because that's useful for decals. If you're going to, let's delete that. If you're going to, actually no, let's just nuke the mirror. If you're going to mirror decals, what you want to do, right, Alt X, you want to go here to these options and enable texture flip U, and every single mirror that you're going to be using with decals is going to be flipping them automatically like this, which is really handy. So then when you're going to run a different decal, let's say this one, right, and you want to mirror this, it's going to get mirrored properly, yeah? So this option here is constant, doesn't get turned off. So in fact, what you could do is simply turn it on in settings and save preferences, right? So let me just delete everything. Let me just nuke the scene to the default. Let's just grab a cube, press Alt X, turn it on, right? And then simply go here and save preferences, right? So next time you're gonna run Blender with Hardops, or in this Blender, and you're gonna run the mirror, you're gonna have this turned on. Next one, include active in multi-mirror flip. Well, this is gonna be including the active object, which means object you mirroring across into the mirror. So watch. I'm gonna move this here, Shift D, Shift Z, and then we're gonna create another cube and we're gonna rotate it like this on the Z-axis so it's easier to see, okay? So now let's grab these two cubes, shift click on this one, Alt X, right? And we're gonna change the orientation here to global. And if I just run a mirror, it's gonna mirror just the cubes. But if I'm going to turn this on, right, it's gonna include this object into a mirror like this. So gonna mirror all of them across this object, which is really interesting, right? So that's what it does. Next one's gonna parent empty to the active object. So the active object is gonna be this one, and when you create a mirror, you're gonna have an empty. So let me just reset the Alt R to reset the rotation and select these two, Shift select this one, and Alt X, and with this option selected, we're gonna have an empty. At least we should have an empty. Hang on. Let me press Alt Z. There we go. There's an empty in the middle. And now watch. I can use the empty to manipulate with this object without turning around of, you know, rotating the one in the middle. So let me just make this empty a little bit larger. Right? So we can see. There you go. So you can grab this empty and you can, you know, do some fun stuff here like this. Next option is gonna be this one, right? Revert gizmo handlers. I think it should be handles, but you know. Well, this is really easy. Whenever you're mirroring something in Hardops, you're going to be mirroring from the side you want to mirror from, right? So you want to mirror from here to here, you're going to click on this side. This option, what it will do, it will simply allow you to flip that behavior to the other side. So if you want to mirror here, you're going to click on this side of the gizmo, and that's it. Now the next option is extremely rare use cases. Let me show you. Alt X, this option, symmetrize only selected mesh, and this only works in edit mode obviously because you have to select specific faces. Now let me just bisect this mesh first so I can show you to it better. So let's run a bisect on it like this, right? Now if I were to use a regular symmetry, so just the symmetry option, right? Like this, and symmetrized, it would symmetrize the whole thing. If I went to edit mode and, use symmetry, it's gonna do the same thing even without anything selected. Now what this option will do, if you select specific mesh like this and in edit mode and click symmetrize, it's gonna symmetrize everything. But if I'm going to turn that on, it's gonna symmetrize only the selected mesh, right? So then you can just, I don't know, maybe rebuild part of this mesh here. It's like you see, it's an extremely rare use case where maybe your mesh is completely messed up on this side and you need to rebuild something on the other side. I don't really know why and when would I use this, but that's what it does. And the last option here on this advanced menu is this one, close after operation. Well, when you turn it off, the gizmo will simply stay. So if I'm going to run a mirror like this, my gizmo will stay, which is kind of useful when you want to run a multiple mirror, right? You want to look around your mesh and then let's say we have a symmetry on. Let me just reset this. There we go. Let's run the mirror. Then the gizmo will stay. Then let's say I wanted to mirror it down on the z-axis, hold shift and mirror. And then you can just, click here, mirror on Y, and then you're done. So, you don't have to press Alt X again and again if you're gonna be rerunning mirrors on the same mesh. And this would cover everything you need to know about HardOps in Mirror. Remember to use the advanced options with Tab. It's very useful and very powerful. And, spend some time playing with these because these in combination with one another can be extremely dangerous and can do some serious damage, especially when you're working with, some mesh in the middle that you're mirroring across, like I showed you before. Some of these combinations are crazy, especially when you're, for example, mirroring from view, which is quite interesting. So you can set it to view and mirror based on view. So you can create some really crazy stuff like this. So anyway, that's it on the mirror, and I'll see you in the next video.